Today, Formula E released the provisional calendar for their 7th season, set to take place across 2020 and 2021. The schedule follows a disrupted season 6 with a lot of familiar locations and a few new twists. Most noticeably, the races actually all take place in 2021, unlike previous seasons where Formula E has straddled 2 years. We kick off the season in Santiago on the 16th of January before heading to Mexico City for another romantic Valentine's weekend, racing on the 13th of February. The usual season opener in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, will take place mid-season this time on the 26th and 27th of February as a double header, before we head to Sanya in China, the first of the rounds that were cancelled this season.
So after Formula E's visit to Sanya, it's return to Europe with the classic European swing. We start off with round 6 in Rome, Italy on the 10th of April. And then it's round 7 at Paris, France on the 24th of April. Monaco, after a 1-year absence, returns to the calendar, to the streets of Monte Carlo on the 8th of May. And then Formula E will head back to Asia once more for the inaugural Seoul E-Prix in South Korea, and that'll take place on the 23rd of May. Round 10 is a to-be-confirmed round, which will take place tentatively on the 5th of June, the location of which will be announced hopefully in the near future.
And the final few races of the season are being held in some familiar places. Berlin will host a race on the 19th of June. New York will follow on the 10th of July. And there will be a double header in London on the 24th of July and 25th of July.
So, I guess it's important to talk about what's changed as something to start with. The most notable one is that Diriyah is mid-season, or the most immediately obvious to me change is that Diriyah is mid-season. Diriyah, when it was announced, or when Riyadh was announced as somewhere that we were going with Formula E, the deal that was done was that it would be the season opener for 10 years, or 10 seasons. So it's quite surprising to see it mid-season. It's not where you would expect it. It's not where it's been the prior 2 years that we've run in Riyadh. But I think that we have to look at that as a knock-on effect of the COVID-19 situation, because this season will end, hopefully, in August this year. So season 6 will only end in August, which is a month later than it would normally have ended. It will end in a very exhausting way. We don't know when pre-season testing will take place yet. We don't know if it will be in October as it would normally be, or whether we'll try and go somewhere a bit warmer and have it later. Who knows? Maybe we'll do it in Santiago. But
as long as it's not in Donington in December, because that will be too cold.
I mean, you wouldn't have any battery temperature problems.
No, but it's
actually, you might have the opposite sort of battery temperature problems, because
when they get too cold.
Yes, you lose state of charge.
Yes,
when batteries are really cold. So
that's right. Batteries tend to perform poorer in the winter time. You lose quite a bit of range, like sometimes 20 to 30% of your range. So
let's not do that. To conclude. But yeah, so Diriyah won't be the doubleheader at the start of the season. I'm sure that's been a quite difficult discussion because of the existing deal, but also it will just be the fact that everything will be required to be pushed back. Also, Saudi Arabia, the kingdom itself, has had very strict COVID lockdown because they had quite a significant problem there. They were one of the very affected countries towards the start. So, yeah, I'm sure that's something that has been negotiated, and these are extraordinary circumstances. So, whatever the contract was standing, like it will be more important to the organisers to have a race there than to not.
Do we think there will be fans at these races, or is it still going to be closed doors like the protocols that were announced by Formula E for the Berlin races?
Well, I mean, that's a controversial topic when it comes to the Riyadh race anyway, but no, I do feel like there definitely are attendees. They admitted that they screwed up the ticketing last year. But yeah, I think we will see. Actually, Riyadh's a good example. So Riyadh, there's these gigantic concerts in the night after the race, and it's like huge sort of ravey pyramid stage set up. And the first E-Prix, there was the first Western concerts that had been held in Saudi Arabia. They're very I don't think people would expect the number of mosh pits. But that kind of thing is very unlikely to come back. So there will definitely be distancing measures. I would assume that Formula E is presuming that this will be something where you could allow attendees, because it's an international calendar. And to some extent, there's no point doing all the freight and traveling if you're not going to actually have fans and engagement and get people on site. You know, you get a pretty backdrop, but that's not necessarily worth all of that.
Yeah, the promoter also has some say, you know, in working with local government regulations, and then you also get into issues like insurance and liability, which then it's that's actually the biggest thing that's hanging over all of these races right now. Why they're taking such extreme and restrictive precautions is because, you know, it just opens them up to a lot of possibilities when it comes to liability. And, you know, we need insurance to have motorsport, and that's just a fact. And they're just trying to be cautious now. In fact, the Berlin races that are coming up, the 6 races that are coming up, will be a good preview of what we can probably expect for season 7, at least for the first few races anyway.
I would assume that possibly for testing, depending on where that takes place. But I would assume that in pursuing the season 7 calendar and in pushing it back to 2021, that actually the plan is that it will operate relatively normally, and that there will be attendees, and that it might not be the case that we'll have, you know, big interactive displays where everyone touches them in the e-village and things. Things will be different, but I would presume that the intention is for these to be open races and for fans and VIPs and sponsors and media.
Yeah. That's certainly the hope, because I mean, we want to be at the races so that we can bring you all the coverage that you've come to expect from us. And it's just, I mean, obviously we've been enjoying a lot of Zoom calls with each other, but I can tell you it's just not the same when you are talking to somebody in real life, right?
No, and I think there's a real importance to getting people like the media and people who can cover the race back, because of course Formula E want coverage. They don't want nobody to talk about what's happening.
Absolutely.
And I personally am absolutely raring to get on a 14-hour flight to Santiago.
Hey, there you go.
Well, of course, as well, season 7, this is the first year that Formula E has been recognised as an FIA World Championship as well. So it's important, obviously, as well as getting media there and fans and stuff, to sort of shout about the fact that it is now an FIA World Championship.
Yeah. So it's important for them to have the sort of exposure and coverage that they're sort of chasing. There is the matter of round 10, which I'm just looking at right now. It's just this very glaring TBC to be confirmed. Where do you think, just putting the question out to the group here, where do you think TBC is going to be?
Hazel, do you want to kick us off? Because
so many possibilities.
I personally think it will be somewhere in Asia. We have the Sanya round relatively early in the season, and then we have the Cell round. It would make sense for there to be another Asian round. We don't have Hong Kong, and we're very unlikely to have Hong Kong again.
Yeah.
At least in the foreseeable future. But there is a huge interest in having more Asian rounds to Formula E. This year we were supposed to go to Jakarta in Indonesia, but we didn't. Obviously because of COVID-19. There were some complications around the Jakarta tracks, but to be honest, I think they were like slightly over exaggerated. So there were some questions about the spending, but I think those were legitimate and typical questions that are asked about sporting tournaments and hosting them. And it's right to ask those questions. Should funds be being used this way?
Also, it's around a national monument, so there are a lot of logistical questions and sort of like sensitivity issues. It's the same with when Formula E goes to Rome or Paris. Anytime when they race around those very historical places, especially Diriyah as well, that those are concerns that must be addressed, and in coordination with cooperation from the local governments. Yeah,
because Formula E smashes up UNESCO World Heritage Site is not a particularly good look.
That's not a good headline to be about. So
so the Jakarta track, although it was reported as having been like unapproved, in fact what happened was there was a 2-phase planning process where the original plan was not approved, but the subsequent plan was approved in the same meeting. So it was obviously just something that the organisers were managing, and part of the sort of bureaucratic process of doing anything like this within sort of like civil processes. So but Jakarta is not named. That is where it was on the calendar. It followed Seoul. So it could be that, it could be another Asian round, it could be another European round. We know that the German manufacturers are really keen for more German rounds, and maybe 6 straight races in Berlin will not have sated their lust.
Well, exactly. Previously, at that position on the calendar, we had seen racing in Switzerland as well. Obviously, we were in Zurich, and then we went to Bern. I'm not sure if there are any future plans for Formula E to go back to Switzerland, but I thought the racing there was always spectacular. So it's a place that I'd like to see back, but I'm not sure about the negotiations of that. There is one other possibility which Hazel will know a lot more about, as you spoke to the person who's trying to actually organise the event, but that is a Formula E race in South Africa, more specifically in Cape Town. But isn't it right, you don't think that will happen in season 7, Hazel?
So I don't think it would. When I spoke to the organiser of the Cape Town E-Prix, who's a very experienced in motorsport and in organising events, they felt that 2022 was a more realistic time that they would be able to organise, or for season 8 generally. So the 2 reasons I don't think it would be Cape Town is partly because they said that they didn't believe that they would be ready for then, and secondly because it's winter there that point in the calendar. So I think Cape Town would come in as a November or December race at the start of season 8, and that would make a lot more sense because it's a Southern Hemisphere country. So I personally think it would be quite tricky to put Cape Town in logistically as well there. But I've made wild or perfectly reasonable statements about the calendar before, and it's turned out not to be true. I'm going to pitch that kind of halfway between Asia and Europe is Georgia. So E-Prix is on the cards.
So are we just gonna pitch races from where we were born there, or where our heritage is? Because I've already had my share of Hong Kong races. Katie's had, we've had the London E-Prix, and that's coming back.
London's close enough. I'll take London.
Yeah.
I'd love a Brighton E-Prix, but I don't think that's ever going to happen. But we do have a green government over down here in Brighton, so
it's Brighton adjacent.
Well, and London is one of the tracks that we don't know where it will actually be. So we don't know if it will be the Excel track
right.
that was proposed, or that was due to run this year prior to that centre being repurposed as a coronavirus hospital. So yeah, it's one of 4 races on the calendar. Yeah, that have little asterisks against them because it's subject to circuit homologation, which is Rome. If there's an adjustment to the Rome track, or maybe they just want to do something about it. I mean, circuit homologation can be a really minor change, like that might just be they're putting in or removing a chicane, that kind of thing. So,
yeah.
And then Seoul has an asterisk as well. So does London, and so does Monaco. So get aboard the full Monaco track hype train, everybody.
Oh, I can't wait for I wonder if people are going to compare those inevitable lap times between Formula E and that other series.
Katie, do you think that would be a problem?
Well, I know that it is a question that gets asked several times to every single driver whenever we go to Monaco, whether they care or not. The drivers don't care. They want the full circuit layout. They, in some cases, might think the Formula E might be quicker than Formula One. But I mean, I'd love to see the full circuit layout because I just love the Monaco track layout. It's just so iconic, and it's something, as a motorsport fan, I've grown up like with it ingrained in my memory forever. But I don't know. I mean, the trip from Saint Devoux up into the casino is a pretty steep gradient. Nothing like Formula E has ever seen. So I will be very interested to see if and how the cars cope getting up there. But
surely that's perfect for Formula E because electric cars have all that torque. They're way better at hill climbing than
yes, that's very true.
A Formula One car having to like go down to low gears or whatever. They barely work in second gear.
They'll just rocket off the top.
They probably will, and then once after you get to casino, it's all downhill. So you can regen. You can regen quite a bit. Yeah,
perfect.
You can regen quite a bit. So it works out quite well.
For my money, I don't think it will be the full Monaco Grand Prix circuit. I've said this before. I personally don't actually think the restriction and the reason that the teams have previously voted not to use the full street circuit, we may well have an extended version of what has been the Formula E track, but I suspect it won't be the full Grand Prix track because, to my knowledge, because it is an FIA A-grade circuit, we would have to build it to Formula One standards. And with the Formula One curbing and stuff, so I don't know if Formula E can build a version of it with their own things that would then be homologated. But to my knowledge, it would have to be the actual Grand Prix circuit, which is always still being built when we're there. So, and
it's always an occasion. It's always an occasion when Formula E goes back to Monaco because there's so much. Obviously, Formula One has made that circuit so famous, but then there's just all that history and nostalgia and of course glamour, and it's just fun. It's just fun.
I love it. I've been every single time Formula E has been there. That was my first ever Formula E race, was Monaco season 1, and I do not plan on breaking the streak. There
you go. Katie's determined.
Also, and I feel like I shouldn't tell people this, but they don't put the prices up when Formula E goes there. So
it's going to be like an inside electric Airbnb. Just bring everyone along.
As long as you can find the keys in the bush. There you go. Go back to travel stories if you don't know what I'm talking about.
And on that note, and to wrap this up, what race are you most looking forward to on the calendar, Katie?
Well, I mean, Monaco does hold a very dear place in my heart, but I always love Rome, and I was so upset when we didn't get to make it to Rome this year, obviously with COVID-19. So I'm just going to say Rome is going to be the track that I'm looking forward to most next year.
And you, Peter?
Mexico City. It's just, every time I go there, it's just an absolute blast. And the Autodromo is one of the only, I want to say, I think it's the only permanent circuit that we go to for Formula E.
Without Marrakesh on the calendar, yes.
Yeah, without Marrakesh on the calendar, which Marrakesh absent, which is a
Yeah.
bit of a shame. So yeah, Mexico City, it's just, the people are wonderful, and it's one of the most well attended races on the Formula E calendar, and it's just that their passion and love for racing and motorsport, and fans crowding outside the Venturi garage waiting for Felipe Massa. It's brilliant. Love it.
How about you, Hazel?
Santiago, just getting there. Actually, genuinely, I'm quite looking forward to going back to Riyadh as well. And I realise that everyone will be like, "What?" But I find it's a very interesting and unique experience, and it's quite a privilege to be able to work as a journalist within Saudi Arabia and to get a chance to look at things there. But to be honest, the
Anyway,
airport security on my way to Santiago.
And Adiria, you get 2 races, so 2 for the price of 1 trip. It works out really well.
Yeah, and hopefully
Love
I
the
can
double
get there
headers,
by 7 different flights this time.
There you go. Just pinball all over the place. Yeah, brilliant.
Perfect. Right. Well, let us know in the comments below which race you're most looking forward to for season 7. Guys, have you got any final words before we wrap this up?
Please like and subscribe.
Yes, and hit the notification thing somewhere.
Yep.
I don't know where
little
it is.
Bell.
Yeah,
you can tell who the
go.
professionals are during this.
Exactly.
But we will see you very soon. Thank you very much for watching, and we'll be back with another video when something happens.
That's us, always on the pulse of things happening.
Yeah, there you go.
Oh dear. This is why I don't do outros.
See you later.